Good afternoon and good morning for those of you guys on the West Coast. I'm Andrew Bagrin, founder and CEO of My Digital Shield. And today also I have with me Derek Mankey, who is the Global Security Strategist at FortiGuard Center. Welcome, Derek.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and for those of you who may not know Derek very well, Derek and I have had a pretty long history together. Derek's been all over the place, and he's made it his life goal and effort to combat the cybercrime out there. He's been seen on many publications and on TV, some things such as CNN, Bloomberg, NBC, MSNBC, Wired, CSO, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, and Financial Times, and many, many others. Also, he's been the recipient of CRN's Security Superstar Award, which is a very prestigious award to receive in the security industry. He's been involved in several global threat intelligence initiatives, including NATO, Interpol, Cyber Threat Alliance, and many, many others. So he's really played a very, very active role in getting out there, providing platforms or inventing platforms to be able to share threat intelligence, being able to learn more faster, uh, being able to figure out ways to take action on that worldwide on a global scale. And all of this is in the name of being able to secure all of our businesses faster, better, and prevent the breaches from happening. Also, one of the things that Derek has been very closely involved in is designing a zero-day vulnerability disclosure framework. Now, this is a framework that is used out there quite often and by many companies to be able to share these zero-day vulnerabilities. Now, Derek, maybe that's a good starting point. Can you tell us a little bit more about this framework? And I know you're mostly known for the work that you've done at FortiGuard Labs, taking FortiGuard Labs from its infant stages to today being one of the top threat intelligence centers out there.
Yeah, sure. So, in particular, if we're talking about this on the zero-day framework, it's very much an art. Obviously cyber criminals and attackers very much know about security vendors. They know about wide open holes and software vulnerabilities in systems. They're often trying to attack those. So you can think of a zero day and a vulnerability as a weapon. We often refer to it as a cyber weapon. Some of these on the black market, just to give you an idea of how technical some of these problems can be, they'll sell up to 150 to $200,000 US, if not more, for a fully functional zero-day vulnerability. Obviously, our business, we don't have a business model for this. We're not a black hat attacker, so our goal is trying to turn it around on the attackers. We're trying to find these zero-day, these software flaws, these weapons into systems before the bad guys do. And the idea there is, of course, if we can do that responsibly, we can work with vendors where those vulnerabilities exist. So we've been a partner with Microsoft for over 10 years. We're the first partner with Adobe on an advanced information sharing program with them as well. The idea is, as we find these software flaws, we report them to the vendor so that they can fix them, release a patch, i.e. Patch Tuesday and so forth, before the bad guys find out about it. And obviously, as we discover these issues in advance, we know what the proof of concept or what the attack code would look like. So we're actually developing intrusion prevention technology. So these are intelligence definitions that are pushed out to our infrastructure worldwide to protect against these attacks before a patch is even available. So it's a pretty unique program.
And not only are you working with the vendors out there, but you're also working with other organizations to share that threat intelligence so that they can also be also protect from these type of attacks as well. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Other organizations. So just to back up a second, I've been with the labs going on 13 years now, and when we started, we had maybe 25 headcount in our labs. We're 200 globally now. We've invested a lot into our research and development center. Andrew, I think Forbes ran an article saying there's over 206,000 unfilled cybersecurity jobs in the U.S. alone. That's a huge number. And we've invested a lot into training programs, into finding the right people and the right expertise in our labs for 15 years now. We've built that up to 200 in our global security organization. But The idea is if we can build the expertise, we can create a simple solution from an intelligence standpoint so that obviously customers and end users don't have to do that themselves.
Yeah, and that's been I think a big shift from when I remember starting at this close to 2 decades ago, where companies would hire cybersecurity professionals at the time to set up a firewall, right? Now the
Right.
evolution of the threat caused the evolution of cyber defenses. Now this machine has become so complex and so interactive that companies have just taken this and given it to the experts, and it's really more of a collaborative effort. And I think that effort really it's collaborative, but it really starts what you guys are doing there. And that kind of it's really is has been the evolution of threat intelligence, starting from like the basic simple type of things to now that the complex system that you guys have built to be able to discover these things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's the trend, and the idea is when we talk about threat intelligence, it's a big word, a really big word. I mean, you go to obviously RSA, any global premier security conference, and you see this word all over the place. But what does it mean? In my experience, a lot of vendors, a lot of people are talking about threat intelligence, but it's only as good as how actionable you can make it. And when I look at threat intelligence, you really need three items, right? I mean, if we look at if we break it down, the most traditional is strategic. So these are readable reports. This is what most people are used to when it comes to threat intel. This is signing up to RSS feeds, blogs, PDF reports. Here's the latest breaking security scene, and here are some remediation or points to protect against that. That's been around for a while, but as we move forward to 2020, I call it a perfect storm, but it's quite staggering to think of where we're headed. We're analysts are predicting over 20 billion connected devices to the internet in just 3.5 years from now. So that's a lot of monitoring. It's a lot of attack surface. It's a lot of different potential vulnerabilities and targets to track. So as we move forward towards all those different connected endpoints, all that growing attack surface, what you see on the bottom, the operational level of threat intelligence, machine feed, and automation is absolutely critical. You really need a combination of both human expertise and automation to properly track threat intelligence, to properly take action to it. And the tactical portion, this is a new realm. This is something we've been developing on the back end from FortiGuard as well, is providing tool sets. As more and more customers want to get involved and know about attacks that are happening on their network, find out details about it, they want to interact. So instead of just reading a report on threat intelligence, they want to dig into it a little bit more, find some graphs. Is this hot in the world? Where else have we seen this? And so forth. That's the idea of this tactical element of threat intelligence. Now it's coming out basically through tools, APIs, web portals, and things like this that can empower the analyst from a customer as attacks are ongoing.
Okay, excellent. I want to get back to a little bit more. So on the screen here is some of the projects that you've been involved in, and FortiGuard's been involved in. I know you've been spearheading a lot of these projects. I'm sure some of these are very recognizable, some of the brand names, but some of them maybe not so much. Anything in particular here that you want to maybe highlight, or is this just like a good overall view of, what, doing threat intelligence, it's not as simple as, feeding a public list somewhere. There's a lot of complexity involved in it.
There's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of issues out there as well. Cyberspace is borderless, right? So, in my point of view, it's very important to work with international organizations based off intelligence that the private sectors, and security vendors will have. I think it's a really important step forward. The good news is we've been doing this, for well over, in some cases over 5 years, and a case like Microsoft, again, we've been a partner with them for 10 years. If you look at the slide what you have here, threat intelligence, as I said, is a big word, so it can really span a lot of operations. If we talk about finding zero-day vulnerabilities and working with the vendor to fix it. That's just on a one-to-one vendor level. So Microsoft, Adobe, and so forth. If we look at how to express an attack, I mean, you know, in 1971, we saw the world's virus. Is called the creeper virus. This was on the 10x operating system. Is one piece of code, one infected system, and it just printed out a simple message, said, "I'm the creeper. Catch me if you can." So if you try to express an attack like that, it's one IP, one system, one virus. We're getting 750,000 viruses in the labs in one day today. And obviously with IPv4, IPv6, all these different, and IoT, as I said, 20 billion plus connected devices, that's a big problem. So the industry is looking at how to describe, an attack on an automated level, on an API, so that an attack, threat intelligence related to an attack can be shared, and automation can occur to start automatically adding protection based on that. So that's the actionable threat intelligence. And that's something, as you said, we've been spearheading. We're a member of OASIS, part of the Cyber Threat Intelligence Technical Committee. STIX and TAXI, these are protocols. Again, STIX is a Structured Threat Intelligence Exchange. So the protocol just is really a language to describe these sort of attacks. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening there. Beyond that, national computer emergency response is really important. As we have 50 billion threat events in a day we're monitoring, if we find attacks happening in a jurisdiction such as the European Union, through the EU, or the US with the US DHS, we can report intelligence about that attack if it's a malicious host, as an example, somewhere. And they can go in to actually take infrastructure offline. So all these projects are a way that we can actually learn more about attacks, but also start fighting back about cybercrime and cyber attackers as well.
And Derek, you kind of described, in 1970s, it was the first virus that just printed out "Catch me if you can," and how it worked, right? Very simple, very easy, didn't really do anything malicious. Now, I'd like to contrast that with today, right? Today you have all of this a more elaborate ransomware and how it gets on a machine, how what happens there. Now there's like multiple stages of attacks, and it's not just a simple hit one file type of thing. There's constant communication, updates, trying to get around defenses. Can you maybe like just do like a quick high level, what happens out there, on the dark web or in the world of hackers whenever they develop these type of malware, these type of attacks? How does that kind of get orchestrated behind the scenes?
Yeah, okay, sure. Good question. It's complex, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Basically, organized cybercrime, right? A lot of this is about monetization. So the reason we're seeing 750,000 viruses, the reason we're seeing so much activity in attacks is because it's not just one person. These are full-out legitimate, they mirror legitimate business models. So they're typically affiliate-driven, meaning that, in the case of ransomware, you have the cash cow, you have the cyber criminal organization with the budget. They want to pay thousands of other people to infect millions of other systems on their behalf. So it's a commission-based revenue model that they have set up on a PPP, as we call it, which is a pay per purchase. So they will basically say, right, I will give you my crime kit if you infect 1,000 systems, and X amount of people pay for that ransom, i.e. they want their data back, we will give you a commission cut based off of that. Now, the problem with that is obviously you have all these other people involved, meaning that they all have different methodologies to try to infect these systems. So it's not just one spam email campaign. You have all these different ideas, all these different attack angles, which is complicating, defense, obviously, for these sorts of attacks too.
Yeah, that sounds it sounds like it's definitely a step above where they were before. And it also explains that I'm sure a lot of our audience have questions is like why do my customers keep getting infected? It's like come on, it's like what's going on there? And I think that someone answers the questions, but as you said, it's a lot more complex underneath the covers of how that all happens. but it's no longer the guy, in the alley with the gun and the mask trying to steal your wallet. It's now like the organized mafia out there with lots of funds, with orchestration, with brilliant people out there trying to figure out ways around the defenses and pulling pieces together to be able to make it happen as a whole. And now
Yeah.
that's a lot to kind of like wrap your brain around. And I imagine for your teams over there, it's a lot to keep track of and trying to track down and figure out how to build actionable intelligence around that type of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of it is it comes down to like you said, the actionable intelligence part of it. That's a very important concept because I always say you can only protect against what you can see. You can have all the intelligence in the world, and in fact, in my point of view, too many people today have too much intelligence. How relevant is that? It's questionable. We live in a very big data problem today. It's a very big data world, right? I mean, we've gone from 10 megabit links to 10 gigs to 40 gig to 100 gig pipes. All of this traffic and information, all these logs that are being fired, they're really like car alarms. Like who pays attention to a car alarm a lot nowadays? It's because you get used to a lot of these triggering. That's the problem is, there's so much noise and attack activity out there. How do you filter down to what's relevant to my networks? And that's what we've been building up for 15 years from our intelligence standpoint. So we're taking in our big data set, again, 2.4 million sensors we've deployed globally. We get 50 billion threat events in a day coming into our labs. We'll run that through a whole bunch of machine learning algorithms, QA testing, making sure that we can actually pick out the relevant attacks and prioritize them. Then we can filter down by region. Again, as I said, if there's something particular to the U.S. or, let's see on the bottom right there in South Korea with KISA. We've been a partner with KISA for several years, Korean Internet Security Agency. If we find relevant local threats, we can report them to them so that they can take action. The idea of these projects and partnerships is that if nobody is ever going to get 100% vision. So if there's anything we're missing locally through these partnerships, we can learn more about local threats, take it into our networks, put it through that same cycle, and release intelligence definitions to block against these attacks.
Okay. Yeah, and like overall, it sounds like just being able to keep track of this and having proper threat intelligence, like having intelligence in anything is becoming like the key way to combat that threat. Um, now, I know your opinion for sure, since you've been so heavily involved, probably one of the top people involved in threat intelligence in the world. Moving forward as we go into the coming years and the coming decades, how do you see that? I mean, I guess evolving, or how do you see things getting better so we can stay ahead of the game?
Yeah, so I think again it comes down to this concept of actionable. So if we look at something like the Cyber Threat Alliance, these are actual competitors. These are vendors getting together to share intelligence. We all agree that we can level the playing field to fight back against cybercrime by sharing on specific research projects. Last quarter or in Q4 last year, we released a white paper on CryptoWall version 3. This is ransomware. Between our research, we found over $325 million of Bitcoin exchanges, ransom funds that have been generated from just this one cybercrime organization. But again, you can share and talk about all the intelligence but what do you do about it? Like, how relevant is that? How do you start automatically protecting against these attacks? That's the actionable part. And that's what we've been developing on the back end. So it all comes down to how strong are your security controls. Obviously, at Fortinet and FortiGuard, we're leading in terms of security patents in the world. We have over 300 security patents. A lot of those are proactive detection based, and that's all about getting the right threat intelligence and putting it into proper security controls so you can block against this. And again, going back to what we talked about originally, as we move 3.5 years into the future, 20 billion plus connected devices, most, even large enterprise, SMB, Soho, and many other organizations are not going to have the resources, are not going to be able to find the proper talent to build up that security operation. So the idea is, what we're trying to do is to take all that threat intel, put it into actionable controls proactively so that it's just seamlessly blocked and integrated on the customer solution.
Right. And I'll tell you this. We've actually in the MDS cloud, we've deployed multiple threat intel feeds. We're very heavily partnered with FortiGuard and Fortinet in what we do. What we found is the threat intelligence and the amount of protection that we get from the threat intel from FortiGuard is superior. It almost doesn't make much sense for us to use any additional type of intelligence out there. So I can say, like, as a firsthand, providing that type of service, being able to plug in that intelligence and comparing it to other types of intelligence, the work that you guys are doing is obviously very, very effective. So from the MDS team, definitely keep up the good work and keep feeding us the what we need, in this world, what we need to be able to help our partners properly protect their customers.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what we're looking at. Again, going back to that discussion of the strategic, tactical, operational level of threat intelligence, and you mentioned your customers. As we look to different verticals as well, we're actually researching. That's the good news. Again, we have 200 headcount in our security operations center, so we're looking at everything across the board. We're looking. We have security experts looking at embedded attacks, so IoT devices. We have mobile now, security experts. We have, again, like I said, our white hat ethical hacking team finding these zero-day vulnerabilities. We have people that understand spam emails really well, and so forth. So we're going to continue to look at new markets, new verticals, new areas of threats as these come up, and certainly work with you guys, My Digital Shield, on that too.
Yeah, yeah, and just interestingly enough, it's so important to have that type of intelligence and that type of protection out there. We've actually seen, IoT type devices come brand new from the factory, pre-infected with something, and as soon
Yeah.
as you turn it on, plug it in, it's now communicating outbound to a C2 server, trying to update something, trying to scan the network, give it information. So it becomes more and more critical that the things that you guys are doing out there to be able to deploy that out there in the field in a very effective way.
Yeah, yeah, and what you're referring to there with pre-infected devices, that's another problem too. I mean, you have the supply chain security there. Also, the other big key trend in the industry is you can kind of see it with this second point on security is borderless. Is what about the insider threat? A lot of security has been traditionally focused on the perimeter, but we also got to think about smart homes and all these different potential attacks that are happening on the inside of the network too.
Yeah, and that to that point, I keep saying to everybody, right? It's like when we're in our homes, when we're at work, we feel safe. There's a lock on the door. There's maybe even a fence around the yard, and there's a border around the country, and we can rely on the fact that we live in a good country, that there's a system built in place to protect all these different levels of threats from getting at us from a physical perspective. But whenever you look out there in a cyber world, it's everybody in the entire world is your immediate neighbor. And not only are they your neighbor, they live in your home, they sleep in your bed, right? They're right there beside you. And it makes it a little scarier, but everybody's embraced this concept of being connected ever since they received that CD in the mail that says AOL, put me in there and you'll be connected, right? Ever since then, now everybody is extremely connected, doing everything that they do, on the internet. They have to keep in mind that yes, there is no borders, there's none of that stuff established yet because this world grew up so quickly. And that's, I guess, we're following up with that and what My Digital Shield is trying to do is leverage the intelligence that you guys provide, all of the effective protection, all the effective inspection, and trying to build up that type of community or defenses or borders or a type of enforcement to be able to protect that cyber world out there, and everybody in America, everybody in the world, really, to protect them from that level of threat.
Yeah, yeah, it's so important today. We're seeing over on average, just from Q1 numbers this year, 500,000, well, 470, but again, it depends on the attack campaigns. But let's see, 470,000 on average attack attempts in just 1 minute. These are hacking attempts. A lot of it's automated again, but it's nearly 500,000 hacking attempts in just 1 minute that are happening on networks worldwide. So there is a lot of maliciousness and attack activity heading out there. So, like you said, the prevention, through My Digital Shield, having a simple solution that can just plug in, scan for threats, and block them is very important. A lot of threats we see today are damaging, meaning by the time they hit a network, it's too late. Obviously, ransomware, like we talked about, and it's escalating past that. So it's really important to have something that can actually detect these threats and block them ahead of time. But,
Right now, I like some of these phrases here, and these are yours here, not my digital shields. But complexity is the enemy. Today's security is borderless, and slow is broken. And that's a very big theme of my digital shield, and as well as Shades of Gray. And we're going to get into the Shades of Gray here in a second, but that's the layer that my digital shield is trying to provide. There is remove that complexity. Obviously, you guys have taken the burden off of everybody, and being able to give valid, actionable threat intelligence, give the proper types of information needed to make it simple for companies like My Digital Shield to provide that level of security needed. But also, My Digital Shield's taking it to a different level to be able to where you said slow is broken, right? Traditionally, in our world, in the SMB world, you know what? It's things are becoming slow, right? Because we started with a simple firewall, and we added IPS, added web filtering, AV, DLP, and the list goes on and on. And as you add all these different additional layers of inspection, things just get slow, right? And it's natural. And like you said, there's 750,000 new viruses that you guys see every single day. Well, that's all being added to, hey, we need to look for more and more and more stuff, and it's just starting to kill that processing power. And this is where it becomes important to start changing that model and being able to not slow it down, but be able to speed it up. And this is kind of one of the things. Now, before I get into that, into the shades of gray, one key important thing to understand is there are different types of ways to look at traffic, to inspect it, and to be able to do defenses as well. Now, here's a really quick list, and maybe Derek, you're probably familiar with all these things, and I'm sure you've been involved with a lot of this type of stuff. But uh, there is a lot of stuff out there that is maybe addresses one issue here, like maybe something like DNS sinkholing, which is one piece of it, and it's a good, very easy way to reduce the amount of threats that could get at you, but it's definitely not an all-encompassing. Now, like looking at this list here, can you just maybe give like a very high level of differences in some of these types of inspection and protection that you see on the list?
sure. I guess at a high level, if I look at this, there's more than one way to block an attack. Any sort of attack, there's never a silver bullet. Any attack has multiple mechanics happening behind it at any given time. This is what we refer to as the kill chain. And if you can spot an attack and block an attack at any point in time, like just think of the analogy of someone breaking into your house, right? Obviously, if you can stop them before they break the window and you see someone shady sitting out front of your perimeter of the house, that's great. You've blocked the attack there. But again, if somebody breaks into your house, goes through the window, and now you have the insider threat, and they're looking after, trying to break into your safe on the inside of the network, your database. How do you protect against that too? So that's the kill chain concept. What you have here are different methods of detection. Really, if I look at this at a high level, you have reactive or proactive detection, and you need both. So when I say reactive, this is detection based off of attacks that you know are already happening in the world. So these are things like file hash check detection and DNS sinkholing, IP sinkholing. Then you also have based off trends, based off of given attacks, how can we predict against new attacks, like detecting against what we call zero-day threats? This is where, again, we're leading in the industry in terms of security patents with instead of just a simple DNA fingerprint check, doing complex pattern matching on a virus, looking at heuristics. So how does that virus actually intend to behave when it executes? And so that's really the difference is proactive and reactive. I think we live in too much of a reactive world. Many vendors out there are just reactive. Obviously, we're trying to really take a stab at how can we beat the bad guys to their game and stay proactive.
Yeah, that's great, and that's I guess that brings me to the next part of it, which is really the shades of gray, and Probably some people on this webinar have seen this before, but just to give a quick illustration of what happens, because MDS is cloud-based, and this makes it this is very difficult to deploy in a regular prem-based configuration, unless of course you have the financial resources and you're able to hire those security engineers that are very scarce out there, and pay them enough. We deploy this more in a cloud-based scenario, and the illustration here is, let's get an example of a traffic flow of Sally over here. She's wanting to go to Bank of America. Well, we find that connection to be, the lightest shade of gray. We trust Bank of America. Sally's pretty decent from a client reputation perspective, and we'll apply all the proper inspections from a signature-based, the stuff that we know there, like what you call the reactive, right? And is there something that we already know about out there that we could protect against? And the reason for this is because since we trust the connection, we want to ensure that there's going to be zero false positives, and nothing is going to happen to that connection. And of course, we're not going to do deep SSL inspection because we want to keep the integrity of this traffic flow, for privacy reasons. Of course, if we see Jimmy over here who is going to check out my website.ru, well, it could be legitimate traffic, right? But it sounds very suspicious. Me being Russian background, I don't trust the Russians at all. They always have something to gain. But so if we see that traffic going over there, we're going to say, well, wait a minute, okay, this looks a little suspicious. So if there is SSL in there, we will do deep SSL inspection, and of course we'll apply all the reactive signature-based type stuff there. But we'll also take it through, some of the more complex engines that could produce false positives, but you know what? The traffic is suspicious. So if it does have, it does produce a false positive, we'd rather protect it from those 0 days than let that get through into the network. And of course, you have on the darkest shade of gray over here, which is, let's say they're going to a known C2 server, botnet server, or let's say they're going to North Korea. Well, heck, we don't trust that at all. We would just auto shun that. I don't care what it looks like at all. We would just completely block that traffic. And of course, you have all the layers in the middle of this type of inspection. So I guess the unique part is being able to leverage all of the intelligence, all the types of pattern matching and everything else that the FortiGuard Center produces, the complexity underneath there, being able to plug all of that appropriately in the MDS cloud to be able to deliver such a system that'll able to look at the destinations, look at the sources, and determine what type of inspection is really relevant for this traffic flow here. And for those of you maybe that don't know really how MDS is deployed and how it's different from other solutions, what we've done, instead of the traditional, hey, take all of these functions that typically exist at the customer's premise, we took all of those and we built out a cloud platform. And we did that for a number of reasons. Number one is, well, now since it's all deployed up in the cloud, we have really unlimited processing resources. So there's no choke point over here on being able to do the proper inspection needed to be able to block the bad traffic. Also, we're blocking it way up here where we have unlimited bandwidth as well. So now your pipe over here is clean. It's not being polluted by all the scans and probes and everything else that's going out there on the internet. Typically, if you have a prem solution, all that comes in here, pollutes your bandwidth, and then it's being blocked at your premise over here. So the other benefit is, now that we're virtual, now that we're up here and we move the perimeter up a level up to the cloud, now we have this thing that we call OmniShield, or it's really an omnipresent perimeter. And what that means is your perimeter is not tied to a physical location. So for instance, if you have a second location that automatically comes online, we could take and extend that virtual perimeter to your secondary location. They will now share that same perimeter as the primary location, have the same protection, same policies, same restrictions, everything as the primary one does. And of course, since they're on the same virtual network, they have access to each other and they can access resources across the board. As well, most of you have probably already heard about the mobile side of it, right? When somebody takes a laptop to Starbucks or somebody walks away with a tablet or mobile phone, Same concept. That virtual perimeter will always be there. The idea is that no matter where you go, no matter what kind of connection you're on, that wherever you are, that virtual perimeter will always grow and extend across the board to be able to give you that same level of protection and give you that same access back into the resources that you have at the corporate office, or maybe those ones that are being hosted somewhere that you're accessing on a regular basis. So physically, you might leave that corporate office, but virtually, you're always in that corporate office, protected by that same perimeter.
Yeah.
The idea is, sorry, go ahead, Derek.
No, I was just going to say that's a really important concept. As I said, going into 2020 with all these different connected devices, how do you manage that? How do you control that? How do you fingerprint that? We're in a very connected world, right? So, as you described, having an omnipresence is critically important because it happens. I mean, a lot of these devices, not only mobile phones, we're seeing attacks on IP security cameras, on routers, on printers. A lot of these devices that are not traditionally security inspected as well.
Right, exactly. And it's gotten so complex, and you can attest to this, that gr security grew up so fast that I feel sometimes we forgot to step back and look at what we're doing. And I feel that I have this slide that I bring up, but I feel that security today is kind of like being able to get clean water, right? To be able to get clean internet, it's kind of like to be able to get clean water. It's some countries you still have to go to the river with a bucket, you get some water, and then you have to boil it, distill it, maybe apply some chemicals depending what type of bacteria there is in it. But you have to take it through a whole process before the water is drinkable. You know, electricity. Some places you have to get a generator, you have to hire somebody to pedal a bicycle to be able to light up the light bulb or whatever the case may be. Today we just plug into the grid, right? And the same thing with the internet, where it's what we're trying to do is, look, we're relying on all of that information. What bacteria is infecting the internet, what viruses are out there, what is that threat, from where, and we're trying to deploy that and deliver clean internet through a service. It's like turning on the tap and just expecting the water to be clean because you're paying for it monthly on a subscription basis. And all the cleaning, all the processing, it happens somewhere centrally, and we don't even think about it. And that's the way the internet should be. It should happen all somewhere centrally. It should all be done automatically through all of the intelligence that's out there available. And it should be just turning on the tap and you just experience that clean internet. And that's what
Yeah,
my digital shield is trying to
and to elaborate on that a little bit further too. My point of view, you need both. You need a platform, as you said, to inspect all this traffic, what is flowing through your networks, what ports, what tracks are they on, what protocols, all that stuff. Visibility on all of that. That's the platform. There's some security vendors that just look at the platform, right? So this is typical routing and whether they're not true security. Then you have pure play intelligence vendors. These are vendors that are just trying to focus on research, trying to focus on intelligence, but there's no immediate solution. So again, it's like the car alarms. We know there's a bunch of problems out there. What do we do about it? And that's
do.
the
Right.
unique position here, right? Again, with the threat intelligence, with FortiGuard and My Digital Shield, is combining the two, taking that intelligence into a platform that can, again, have the security controls to, like you said, the clean internet to start blocking against these attacks. It's a really important concept.
Yeah, it's definitely teamwork, right? And that's why, I can really appreciate all the effort that you've put in. And I know you've been flying all over the world here recently, and I really appreciate you making time to be on this webinar with us. But trying to establish all those partnerships, and I know that in the past, doing threat intel sharing has been, man, it's been tough, right? You have the lawyers involved, and that's it. It just kills everything, and we're all behind all of a sudden because the bad guys, they're sharing information, right? Their
But yeah,
lawyers don't get in the way of it. So I am,
not only are they sharing information, they're trying to keep a pulse on what the white hats, what the good guys know about them. And obviously, as soon as the cat's out of the bag, or they know that some sort of aspect of their techniques have been discovered, they're going to go dark. I mean, they're going to shift tactics too. And that's the whole game is just following that aspect, right?
right, absolutely. Yeah, I actually had somebody recently tell me that a lot of the advanced malware out there or advanced threats, to avoid detection, they can actually check if they're running in a sandbox, and they'll just it'll just delete itself. Um, makes it
Yeah,
really.
every year I sit down and kind of write security predictions and look at what's happening ahead of the curve, and that was one of the security predictions we released this year was the concept of two-faced malware, which is basically, cyber criminals are starting to actually show fear. They know law enforcement, efforts like us, because we're involved working with law enforcement across the world. They know that they can't be as sloppy as they were before. So they're really trying to cover their tracks, as you said, by trying to evade security detection and have environmental awareness, so that if they run in a sandbox, they try to completely execute a innocent behavior pattern, so it's not suspicious. And then, of course, when they know that they're in the proper environment, they go up for the kill and do the malicious code.
Right, and maybe Derek, right now is a good time. Like I wanted to give a little bit of a tip, something simple that everybody can do. And I believe you're the one that told me this, but if you enable the Cyrillic keyboard on your computer, there's malware out there that will actually just delete itself because they're wanting to not attack. And I don't know if it's for reasons of Eastern European countries or Russia as saying, hey, you're not allowed to attack our countries, otherwise, we're gonna go after you. Or I don't know what the case may be, but um, can you elaborate a little bit more on that concept of them actually looking at what keyboards enable? And is that something that everybody here could do? Is maybe just enable the Cyrillic keyboard on their laptops and computers to just get that extra layer of, hey, that advanced malware did not execute just because I did this small, simple thing.
Yeah, it's certainly one angle. Again, going back to what I talked about earlier, there's a whole kill chain involved with a lot of these attacks. So if we talk about tips, how does an attack get into the network? I mean, they're typically trying to infect your system through vulnerabilities again. So obviously keeping patches up to date. A lot of times they're trying to social engineer, wait for you to visit a malicious website. So again, this comes down to think before you link, like I said. A lot of the times, obviously, phishing attacks, these sorts of things will have a link that's not properly, it's a typo, it's not a proper domain. Same thing with mobile malware. A lot of mobile malware in the application stores will pose to be something like, say, Angry Birds, but if it only has 100 downloads, it's probably not Angry Birds, right? Like, it's having a conscious of what you're actually installing on your systems, I think, is really important.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. And that's, I think, that the thing that everybody, I know most of our partners struggle with is that education component to their customers, because it's not that large enterprise environment, and a lot of times it is the SMB space, and there's more turnover, and it's harder to educate them, and it's harder to create that awareness.
Yeah,
And
sorry.
yeah,
I was gonna say, Andrew, when I look at security strategy too, as I said, with a lot of these advanced threats today, it's really important to try to block everything that you can, but there's never a 100% solution. So another growing trend we see is if you can't block it immediately, because threats are always shifting, continuously apply that intelligence through the solution to detect threats as they occur. Right? I mean, that's you look at a lot of the big data breaches out there and cases that have happened. Unfortunately, these threats are sitting on networks for a year or longer, which is a huge, huge window of operation in terms of damages. Cybercrime is estimated to be anywhere from 500 billion to $1 trillion plus industry, and a lot of that is fueled by slow responses, by threats that are that can go through networks undetected as well.
yeah, and that's a huge amount of money that's affecting everybody out there that's trying to live a very legitimate life. Um, So one of the things that I also there's a couple things I want to get out of the way here, and maybe we can open up some questions if people have questions to for Derek or myself here. I see there's some stuff in the question. We'll get to that in a minute. But we did talk quite a bit about adding a cyber breach policy to every My Digital Shield subscription, and we are launching that starting Monday next week. That will be launched. So keep an eye out for that. You should receive an email if you're not currently a partner. sign up to be a partner. You'll receive an email whenever that goes live, and you'll be able to take advantage of that. Now, this is coverage that's included in all the subscriptions. There's no additional cost. It is automatically included in all of them. There's a simple, hey, we want to make sure we have the right information on the customer so that Assurant can properly cover them for that. Uh, the other thing is a lot of you have seen us promote is BYOG, bring your own gateway. So there's a lot of gateways out there that are deployed, and many times you don't want to you don't want to go out there and change what you already have, and that thing supports IPsec or GRE. And we have a good list of certified gateways out there to turn basically your existing simple gateway into a machine that is everything that Derek just talked about today, that has all of that intelligence, has all of that capability, the shades of gray and everything, just by connecting it through the MDS cloud. One of our strongest partners in this arena is IL8 with the Arachnus router, and we continuously partner with them to make this a much tighter integration, to make this work more seamlessly, because they have a terrific router, dual WAN, they have the LAN ports there, they have all the capability within that router, and again, seamlessly connects to the MDS cloud and be able to provide that level of protection. We are currently running a promotion for this webinar, and there's a couple things here. So call into this number, the 1-800 number you see on the screen there, and we'll follow up with an email with that number, and you will get this. This router is by itself is worth quite a bit more than $99, but we continuously try to get this out everywhere we can to make sure that everybody out there is properly protected. So we're offering the special $99 will give you the Arachnus router plus 2 months of free subscription to My Digital Shield. So I also wanted to add an additional thing to there. Yesterday was Memorial Day, and we honored all of those who served and lost their lives, gave up their lives for protecting this country from all of the threats out there, from all of the attackers, from all the bad guys out there. And we have a lot of people with us as well who have served and are continuing to serve with us. As the threat changes and as the threat grows, the threat is also coming across the wire. And I'm happy to have a lot of people, I'm actually honored to have a lot of people on my team that are currently serving in the military, as well as currently serving with My Digital Shield to try to protect against both types of threats, both physical and both cyber. So I wanted to actually double that months of subscription. So if you're in the military, or you have been in the military, and obviously everybody in this webinar is currently trying to protect the United States, Canada from the cyber threat, then you guys are doing a double job, right? You have lived your whole life trying to protect this world from the bad guys, no matter what type of threat it is. So we will extend that to be actually 4 months of free service of My Digital Shield. Still the same $99 for the Arachnus router.
Cool.
Now, I want to thank everybody, and before we go, I actually wanted to maybe take a few questions here, because we have a couple of minutes here. So we have a question here. What type of prem gateways do you recommend? So I think that question came before I actually pulled up the slides. So it's probably pretty obvious that we have a very strong partnership with IL8, with our Arachnus router. Very, very solid. We've been very successful with all the ones that are getting deployed out there. And as I mentioned, we are continuously working to enhance that capability to be able to make it a lot simpler, to where you could just plug it in, check a box, and bam, it enables and it turns on. Let's see if there's any questions here specifically for Derek. Derek, I want to thank you again, and I know, like, a lot of the stuff that you do, it's extremely complex. It's a lot of stuff that's underneath the hood that people don't even realize that happen out there, or has to happen, to be able to get this type of actionable intelligence, this type of protection. And I just wanted to make it very apparent to everybody, and just bring you on here to show that there is a lot that happens underneath the covers. It's not as simple as building a simple policy and bam, things just magically happen. The magic is really the hard work, and that's the hard work that you're doing out there, that your team's doing out there, the automated systems that you've built, the sharing platforms, and also these type of interactions with those organizations like Interpol and NATO and everybody else out there. So again, I want to thank you very much, and thank you for making the time for us here.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. And I'll just close that off with one final statement, and going back to that, the three security concepts we talked about. Slow is broken, right? So again, these threats are changing so fast nowadays, and a lot of what cyber criminals are trying to do and attackers are to evade security detection. So through our intelligence, we're actually building in a lot of response mechanisms to that. It's really important as they try to evade security. We're building that intelligence to push it back as well. It's another part of that actionable threat intel. But at the end of the day, there's over 206,000 unfilled cybersecurity jobs in the U.S. alone. It's a huge lack of talent set and skills, and this is something we've been forging and building up. World-class program for over 15 years in the labs, and we're going to continue to do so, working with My Digital Shield and other partners to make the world a safer place.
Absolutely, and I did see some more questions there. A lot of them are about some other things like the cyber breach insurance and other questions that we can get answered offline. Feel free if you have any additional questions that come up, feel free to email us at info@mydigitalshield.com, and we'll be happy to answer any questions there. Derek, once again, thank you very much, and we're looking forward to possibly in the future having you come back on here again and maybe doing another educational session to educate the world out there. And our partners are the guys out there on the front lines. They are helping protect SMB. So I really appreciate you making the time and doing this for us. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It's my pleasure, man.
Thanks.